Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah, this is my granny era. Today I wanted to share with you guys all of the stuff that I have read in the last couple of weeks. Now I know that I said in my December goals video that I made for this year that I wanted to start doing weekly wrap-ups instead of bi-weekly wrap-ups, but I just didn't get to it. Actually, I got to it and then I went back to edit the video and I was like, I just rushed through that whole thing. So I wasn't very happy with the video and I decided just to wait. So here we are on January 16th and I am going to tell you all the stuff I've read in the last couple of weeks. It has been a pretty fun and rewarding couple of weeks, start to the new year. So let's look at what I read. I started this series. I'm not going to continue with it right now. Grace and Favor. The Grace and Favor mystery series. I have read through this series a couple of times. This is by Jill Churchill, and they're like cozy mysteries. I think there's a murder in each one. I can't remember exactly what happens in each one, but they're good. They take place right after the stock market crash in America, and people are trying to recover, get back on their feet. And this brother and sister find out that they have inherited an estate with tons of money. But in order to inherit it, to get it for themselves, they have to live there for 10 years in that village, which is different from where I think they were living in New York City, and they have to move to this small town outside of town. And they got to live there for 10 years in the house, and they have to provide for themselves financially. And if they can do that, then they inherit all the stuff. So they're like, what do we got to lose? They had been orphaned. They were rich socialites, and everything fell apart when the stock market crashed and everybody started losing everything. So they were made orphans and they were just like, we got nothing to lose. So they decide to do it. And when they get there, there are mysteries to be solved. I think there are maybe 6 books in the series, and they're all good. I read through and I was like, there was some harsh language that just was unnecessary. And I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it as much as I used to when I read these before. So I decided to go ahead and DNF it. I actually have the whole series and I'm going to put it up for sale on eBay. So if anybody wants this series and you live in the US, let me know ASAP, because I will just go ahead and send it to you if you are here in the US. Rather than list it on eBay, okay? So let me know, because I am going to get rid of the whole series. All right, next up is probably one of my favorite books of 2024. It was the last book I read in 2024. I finished this on New Year's Eve. It was so atmospheric. It was exactly what I was looking for. It's The Winter Ghosts by Kate Moss. Now, this was not something I normally would have picked up. I'm not a ghost story kind of person. And I'm also I don't pick up a lot of contemporary fiction. I gotta really want to read it before I will pick it up. But this one was recommended by Rosamunde, and I will put her channel in the description box. She loves Kate Moss and has recommended her on several occasions, and some of the other things that she recommends I have read or want to read, or we just seem to read kind of on similar veins. And so I was like, well, Rosamunde likes this so much, I'm going to try her out. And so I did order this, or maybe, I can't remember if I ordered it or somebody gave it to me for a gift, but anyway, somehow I obtained this book this fall and started in. I was just hooked. It was so atmospheric. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I plan on reading this book every winter. It just had that whole feeling. And when I said that I don't read ghost stories, I don't know, are there ghosts in this story, or is it more in the guy's head? You kind of don't know at the end if it was just in his head or if it really happened. But basically there's this guy, he gets stranded in the French, the mountains in France. He's driving through and he gets stranded, and so he ends up walking down to this village, and it's very snowy, it's cold, icy, whatever, you can't see very good. He gets down there and it just seems different. It seems old, even medieval. It just seems really, not of his time. And he ends up being taken care of by a couple, and, he's been, out, he got a car wreck and he's, not doing great or whatever. And so this couple kind of tends to him, and he sleeps there overnight. And anyway, he has an adventure, and he ends up encountering someone, and he ends up solving a mystery in the village. And it all just takes place in a matter of a day or day and a half. There's just a handful of characters, and the story is super simple. There's just a couple of scenes, and it's just such a simple story, but it's so good. It just sets that atmosphere for winter. And I mean, if you guys have read this and you know other books that are similar to this, like the stuff you want to read when it's cold and wintry, let me know, because this was exactly what I was looking for. And then there was a little history bit in it that I was not aware of, this portion of history. And so, like, you know, I'm not going to tell you any of that stuff because they're all spoilers. But it was like a one sitting read. I just devoured it and learned some new stuff and whatever. You guys got to read this book if you haven't yet. So, side note, I'm assuming Mom wants me to send this. I will send this to you, Mom, but you have to send it back to me before like November 1st. Because I want to read it again this winter. And you need to read it this winter. So I'm going to send it to you ASAP. Read it, send it back. Okay, next up. I went through The Scarlet Letter. This is the group read for Nathaniel this year that I am hosting. You guys have heard about that ad nauseum, so I won't go into it. But you can find all those links, you know, on my channel if you're interested. So this is by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it tells the story of a Puritan community. It starts off with Hester Prynne, who is in prison, and she comes out to, you know, see everybody, I guess, walks out of prison, and she's got a... she's got the letter A embroidered on the bodice of her dress. And this is her punishment for committing adultery and having a child that isn't her husband's child. So the story goes through her sort of processing through, you know, the shame of that or the feelings about that and the way that her community treats her. And throughout the story, Hester is being... She's healing, right? It's hard for her. Because, you know, the Puritan community was kind of harsh on that sort of stuff. But she is healing throughout the story. And on the flip side, the guy who is the father of their baby, he is unknown to the community. And they keep trying to get her to tell who it is, and she won't tell, right? I don't think it's necessarily that she's trying to protect her reputation, as much as she realizes that... her, you know, sin, if you will, because that's what it was seen as in her community, it's very public. She couldn't have hidden it if she wanted to, right? But that shame of being outed instead of being able to out yourself, I really feel like that's why she doesn't out the guy, but, you know, whatever. So anyway, throughout the story, because he is hiding it, he basically is dying inside. While she is healing and coming back to life, he is slowly dying inside. So it's a very interesting, is dichotomy the right word? Or, you know what, two-sided thing. And it just speaks so much to the way we treat people and the value we put on people. The way that we can be blinded to our own faults while pointing the finger at others. There's just so much to this story. I am going to do kind of an analytical video, like... at the end of this month, but I want to give the other people in the group time to read this. So if you are interested in reading The Scarlet Letter or anything else Nathaniel Hawthorne, go down to the description box, find the Discord, and join us there for our discussion. All right, next up is, this is one I DNF'd. So I started reading The Lost Memoirs of Jane Austen by Siri James. This would have been a third reread. It would be a second reread. It would be a third read. Third time through. And I got, like, to page 102. But this Jane is not my Jane, as Lucy Worsley so irritatingly said. This is not the picture of Jane Austen that I have in my mind. Not only is her, like, voice just way too syrupy and her, like, actions are just too demure. The dialogue in it is just like you're playing dolls or something. Like, it's just moving way too slow. It's like, hello, how are you? I am fine. How are you? I am fine. Thank you for asking. Oh, you're welcome. How are you? It's like, just every word that came out in dialogue between people who know each other was not like polite kindnesses back and forth, right? Oh, you play very well. Oh, you are just too kind. No, I couldn't accept such compliments. Oh, please do. Oh, well, if you insist. Oh, well, thank you, ma'am. Like, just get to the point. Like, people just, it wasn't, they're just like us, okay? They were just like us. Not only is that all irritating, this Jane is just not super smart. Anyway, I just DNF'd it. I just can't. I had to DNF. But, I did read it for the challenge at Anne's channel, for the Jane Austen birthday and epistolary January and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry, guys, I failed, but I will keep it in my Jane collection, because if somehow every Jane book that I own just poof disappears, except for this one, I might give it a fourth read through, but probably not. Okay, so next one up. Stonehenge. Now, I don't know what in the world happened to my copy of Stonehenge that I read this past weekend. I think it's possible one of my kids swiped it, which sort of irritates me, but not a lot. Anyway, I can't find it. I don't know. I have no idea where it is. But I read Stonehenge. It was the visitor's guide to, when I went in 2019. I never did actually read it after I went. I sent it to my mom so she could look through, just because, she didn't get to go, and I wanted her to get to see what it looked like and learn some stuff. And then she sent it back, and then I just had it on my TBR forever. But then I went again last spring and thought, I should read that visitor's guide. So anyway, I read through it this last Saturday. It was just like kind of a great fun thing to look at and remember all the fun that we had and the cool stuff that we learned about. Stonehenge is just such a fun and interesting place to visit, or even just think about, because while there's all kinds of theories about what it is and who made it and why they made it and when they made it and how was it used, like, the truth is we really don't know, because anything that we've used it for in modern times we have record of, and is just kind of, either you're just hanging out looking at it, you're just enjoying, right? It's part of the scenery. But if you're doing anything like really spectacularly formal at it, it's reenactments of things we think happened there, right? We know at the very least it was used as, kind of like a calendar sort of thing where you could track the solstices. But there's so many questions, right? Lots of archaeology and lots of things and lots of speculation based on things we found other places and nearby places. And there's just so much fun stuff to research about Stonehenge and the area. But the cool thing is because none of us knows exactly the origins, like, it kind of belongs to all of us, right? A little bit, because it could have been anybody at any time. This was my first Historathon read of the year. So over on the Historathon Discord, we chatted just a little bit about it, and just about that whole idea of, history being something that is only written by certain people and only saved by certain people. And so the more we read and the more we dig, the more we can kind of put pieces together and form our own interpretations. But that so much of history is an interpretation, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a bad thing. It's okay to not know all the stuff, right? So anyway, I really enjoyed it. It was a great book to sort of kick off my Historathon 2025. Oh, another thing that I want to mention, I was looking at my Goodreads here. There's a part that talks about the Trillathon. So the Trillathons are the ones that have the things like that and then the thing across the top, right? So it's like almost a box, but not quite. One of them fell in 1797, and it stayed there until 1958 when they lifted it back up and secured it with concrete. And so I was talking about how before 1797, the people all saw the Trillathon standing, and the henge looked a certain way. And then from 1797 all the way until 1958, they saw it a completely different way because the Trillathon had fallen. And then in 1958, when they re-erected it, now we see what they saw before 1797. And so it's just so interesting to me. It's kind of like, I was saying how in Little Women, they're reading Pilgrim's Progress, and just, you get the impression that they're like, this is a really old classic book we're reading here. And so when we read Little Women, we're like, this is a really old classic book we're reading here. So it's like a classic within a classic, right? And so just like knowing that like we saw stuff that people saw, you know, in the earlier part of the 18th century, but all in between saw something different. Like there's just a lot of old history. It's very cool. I could go on, but I won't. So what else do I have here? The other book that I finished is, well, no, I didn't finish, but I finished the section that I wanted to read. So this is A History of Knowledge by Charles Van Doren. And this is another of my Historathon reads. And I marked here where quarter one information ends. So page 86 is where quarter two information starts, because this is like a, you know, it's a all of history sort of book. So the first 85 pages I read also this weekend. And I don't know, I liked it okay. I have a lot of notes about it. Let's see what I have. I did enjoy this. There was some good information in it. You know, he's very engaging, very chatty sort of style, like super readable. The book was published in 1991, so in some ways it's a little bit dated. He goes into Islamic jihad just a little bit, and the way he talks about it is super flippant, as if, you know, we're promoting the growth of groups that we know have now become radicalized. Like, I don't want to go into all that, but anyway, so some of that was kind of dated and weird, but there were parts that were interesting. He brings up some things like the efficiency of English, of how we can say so much with just, you know, a handful of letters, as opposed to other languages which need so many, you know, characters and things. When he talks about the Aztec and the Inca, one of the things I found was really interesting, he said that they grew many grains, vegetables, and fruits that were unknown to their Spanish conquerors, but today some 60% of all of the foodstuffs in the world are descendants of crops that were grown in Mexico and Peru 500 years ago. So they made a significant impact on the food that we eat today. So there were some interesting things. There were some things that I disagreed with him about. Some pretty significantly. I think that he takes kind of a like Sunday school flannel board approach to the history of the Jews and the history of Christianity. He seems to kind of take like a children's Bible version of things rather than trying to see deeper concepts. And that really bugs me because the guy seems to be kind of scholarly. So I feel like he could take a more scholarly point of view there. And it's not even because it conflicts with my faith as much as it just conflicts with what the Bible has to say about some stuff. So one instance that just really unnerved me, he's talking about the history of human sacrifice and how he says that almost every religion had human sacrifice as part of their worship. And then he goes into the Jews and how the Jews, you know, they stopped sacrificing humans to Yahweh very early in to their history. He starts to tell the story of Isaac and Abraham, and, you know, how Abraham takes Isaac up at the mountain because God says, you know, you're going to go up there and, you know, sacrifice to me. And so he takes his son, they go up. You know, when you think about that, you're always like, wow, why was Isaac so willing to go? Well, because everybody in that society and every religion and culture for who knows how long had been sacrificing their children to the gods. So it was just something they did. And that was what the gods required of them in their minds. And so they would sacrifice many, many children to the gods. And so I almost wonder if, like, did Isaac kind of see this as sort of an honor? Like, well, this is, you know, what you do. This is what you do for the gods. And so I guess it's my turn. Like, I don't know if that's how he saw it, but that's why it wasn't that big of a deal, right? Because Abraham's just like, okay, well, you know, he's getting to know this God Yahweh, and he's like, well, this is what this God requires, I guess. So they get up there, and then God is like, no, this is not what I'm going to do. I've provided a sacrifice, and, you know, there's like a ram stuck in the thicket, and he pulls that out, and that's what Abraham sacrifices to Yahweh. And the whole point of that story is to show that Yahweh is different from the other gods. He's not a God that requires human sacrifice. He is a God that values the life of a human. He values it above the life of an animal. And, you know, no matter how we feel about that, whether we think that, you know, humans and animals are just as valuable or whatever, but that's not the point of that story. The point is that's not the God that Yahweh is. He's not like those other gods who require the blood of your children. He took animals instead, okay? But that's not the direction this guy is going by sharing that story. He's basically saying that that shows us the end of the history of the Jews sacrificing humans to Yahweh. And there's just no evidence of that. Like, nowhere do we see Yahweh requiring his people to sacrifice humans before that Abraham incident or afterwards, right? So that's just a weird and unbiblical and untrue, direction to go with that. I just feel like that was just like a wussy way to make a point, right? Like, don't use the one God out of all the gods of that time period who doesn't require human sacrifice don't use that as an example of human sacrifice. Okay, but anyway, like, I don't know. For the most part, like, I'm going to finish the book. I'm going to keep reading, but it's like I said the other day. Like, I think I just need to understand that I'm smart too. And not be intimidated just because dude, is a scholar. Like, we're all scholars. We're studying stuff. We're scholars. All of us. So since finishing that portion there, that was my goal for quarter one this past weekend, I have been dipping in and out of 3 different books. One of them is the book of short stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne that you guys, again, have heard about so much from me. Secondly, I have been reading through Jane Austen's letters and enjoying those, but not a lot of new information, because a lot of the stuff that you read on Jane Austen, the fan fiction and, her biographies and stuff, a lot of it's taken from the letters, right? So it's just kind of like a quick summary of stuff you really already know. But then I've been reading The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Gooch, and I'm just about done. I've only got like, I don't know, 50 pages or something left. So I will finish that up this evening after I get done doing all these videos. And this is the group read for the children's classic read-along that I am hosting this whole year. So each month we are reading a classic children's novel, and you guys can find that information also in the Discord. So check that out in my description box. But this is such a just sweet novel. I'm enjoying it so much. I hadn't read it in a really long time, and I had forgotten how much of a faith element it has. So if you are a person of faith, you will really enjoy this story. And even if you're not, you will really enjoy this story, I think, because a lot of it is just about doing good and doing the right thing, right? No matter what your faith is. But it is heavy on, the Christian faith, if you, just to put that out there so you know. But this little girl, Mariah Merriweather, she is orphaned. She ends up having to go live with her cousin in the West Country, and her governess goes with her. And everybody has like beautiful names, right? Her governess is Miss Heliotrope, and then she, her name is Mariah Merriweather, which is a beautiful name. She meets someone named Lovelace, someone named Robin. There's Marmaduke Scarlet. Like, they just all have sweet, beautiful, fun names. Even the animals, and the animals play a big part. They are very smart animals, and they kind of do stuff that normal animals don't do. So it's a fantasy in a way, but also like it could happen, like it could, but kind of maybe a magical realism, but not even magical. Just, I don't know, just a probable fantasy. How's that? But anyway, she goes to live with her cousin, and she realizes that her family, the Merriweather family, has a big responsibility within this community. Then there's some wrongs that need to be righted, and just some attitudes that need to be changed. And her, as the newest moon princess of Moonacre, which is where she lives, she has that responsibility of putting things to right. So it is a really beautiful story. I avoided it for a long time because it's called The Little White Horse, and like, I don't like reading about animals. And so I was just like, I don't want to read a horse story. It's not a horse story. Like, the Little White Horse plays a teeny tiny part in this bigger story. So it's not a horse story. And it's a beautiful story. So I would encourage you guys, if you haven't read it before, pick it up. You can pick it up this month and read along with us for the chat with us in the Discord, or even read it later on and come back to Discord and find the thread and chat with us there. But I'm almost done with that. And then after that, I don't know what I'm going to read. I really would like to read something for Epistolary January, since I did DNF my last one. But, this other one. This was another one I was supposed to read for Epistolary January, and I DNF'd it also. This is Delicious by Ruth Reichel, I think. And I was getting ready to read it, and something was just like, you should look up some reviews on this. And I did, and I was just like, there were so many disappointing reviews. People were just disappointed that I was like, you know what? I probably don't want to take the time to read that right now. So this is one that was pulled from my TBR pile pick. So if I don't read it by the end of the month, I do have to unhaul it, but I'm kind of okay with that. So I do want to read something for Epistolary January. I said that I was going to read Helen Keller, and I am on page 38. And I'm not even to the letters part yet. I'm just on her telling her story, but I'm just not enjoying it. I don't know what my problem is. So I don't know what we'll do about that. But anyway, once I finish this book tonight, I'm going to find something really fantastic to read, because I'm feeling a slump coming on. It's not here yet, but it might be. And it's one of those slumps where you know that you read something so great and you just want to get back that feeling. And that's how I feel about like the Winter Ghosts. I just want that feeling again before our winter is gone. All right, guys, I better go. This is a really long video. Hope everybody's having a great night. I will see you soon. Bye.